Loving the Divorce Podcast? Take it further with Amicable Space, our exclusive membership for people navigating separation and divorce. Get expert webinars, exclusive content, a supportive community, and our Amicable Extras podcast with extended interviews and expert insights. Join today at amicable.space/membership because the right support makes all the difference. Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore all aspects of ending relationships, separation, and parenting apart. If your marriage or partnership has ended, or you have friends and family who are separating, this podcast is for you. I'm Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. In each episode, we look at relationships and separation from different angles, including the emotional, legal, and social. I'm joined by experts and special guests who share their own unique stories, experience, and tips with the goal of helping people end relationships in a kinder and better way. In this episode, I'm joined by Jonathan Fitter Harding, a creative entrepreneur and proud dad of two, to hear his separation story and share some practical co-parenting insights. Jonathan opens up about his separation and shares how well-meaning friends and family unknowingly made things a lot more challenging. We dive into co-parenting, focusing on the nesting arrangement, and explore the practical day-to-day details of this approach. We also talk about the benefits of joint therapy and how it can help separated couples maintain a positive relationship for the sake of their children. Jonathan shares how therapy even supported him and his ex in navigating finances during a separation. Finally, he explains how he continues to co-run a business with his ex-partner and how their approach to separation has made this collaborative journey possible. If you loved this episode, then please subscribe and rate us on your preferred listening platform. Welcome, John.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to meet you, and I'm really chuffed that you're here. And I'm excited to hear a wonderful, positive co-parenting story. So why don't we start right there? Why don't you give us a little bit of background into your separation story?
So my story is with my ex-husband, Ben. We've got two children who we adopted. And back in around June, July 2023, we both experienced changes in our life, changes in work. And that really kind of triggered us both to look at what we wanted for ourselves, for each other, for our family, for the future. I went on a bit of a personal journey and ended up in counselling for approximately 18 months. So that was kind of like a very separate journey for me. Ben was kind of going through his own thing. We kind of started to just want very different things. I enjoy the safety and security, being at home. I like sitting on the sofa, watching TV. And Ben wanted, after a change of job, to go and explore and go out more. And those types of situations started to bring anxiety towards, my relationship. I became very anxious. And through obviously going through counselling and stuff, I learned obviously the different types of attachment. And whilst I'm normally a very, very secure person, I was suddenly thrown into this anxious attachment. Ben was kind of moving into a avoidant. And as I'm sure you're aware, avoidant and anxious don't go well
mix
together.
well. No, that can lead to fireworks, absolutely. So it doesn't sound like there was a huge blow up or there wasn't an incident that sparked this, but it sounds reminiscent of what lots of people say to us, that they've just grown apart. And sometimes I think, we're all tempted to make a big story and a narrative, but the story of growing apart is quite a tough one from what you're saying.
I found that harder to cope with and harder to process than if someone had cheated or someone had done something wrong. No, exactly. And the worst thing is that you don't really know what's gone wrong. And so you've got family and friends going, oh my God, what happened? And you kind of go, well, I don't really know. And so they're like, okay, so why are you splitting up then? And you're like, because we know that we need to, but we don't really know why we need to. And that's why we then went into couples counselling, and that really helped us kind of pick at where things started to go wrong, even though we couldn't really see it. It's just those really small changes. It's those conversations that aren't happening that you should be having. And again, that builds to resentment and conflict. And it built from there. So yeah, it was really, really hard. And I really struggled not being able to say it in a sentence, this happened.
Yeah, it's like you need an elevator pitch for why your relationship's ending, don't you? And if it's complicated or nuanced or not straightforward, you're right. I've never really thought about it in that way before, but it's really tricky, isn't it, when you're struggling to process yourself, and yet everybody will ask you if they care about you, won't they? What's happening and what's going on and what's gone wrong, and they'll feel that that's a supportive thing to do. But I guess maybe it felt even a bit intrusive when you were still trying to process it yourself.
It's very intrusive, and it begins before you even separate, and that's what was really hard. So as things change, people start posting more on social media, and people message, this was happening to me, and people message going, "Oh, is everything okay?" Ben's, posting a bit more on Instagram than he normally does. It's not really like Ben to do that. And I didn't, Ben wasn't doing anything wrong at all. He was just exploring a new kind of side to his life. But then that brings the anxiety to me because, like I said, Ben's not doing anything wrong, but it's causing people to question me about my marriage and my relationship. So then I'm like, oh, actually, is he doing something wrong? And then that builds conflict, even though there's nothing really to be, there's nothing wrong, but it does. Other people externally can look in and go, well, that's changed and that's different from what it normally was. So something must be wrong. I'm going to find out because I'm nosy.
It's funny, isn't it? The friends and family thing. We know friends and family want to support. We know they want to do the best for you and that they love you. But sometimes, as you say, their intervention can actually escalate things for you, can make it more complicated, unintended, totally. But it just lands wrong, doesn't it? And I think sometimes I always think you almost needed like a comms plan, which sounds very kind of corporate, doesn't it? But I do think comms plan for your friends and family when your relationship is changing, it can save a lot of trouble.
To be fair, it is something that we talked about. And it was quite hard because just different personalities for Ben and I'm a very open book. I will tell if something's happened. I'll tell them what's happened. Ben is much more reserved and likes to have things a little bit more pre-planned. And actually, that was kind of what he kind of wanted. Well, what are we going to say to people? And I would say, well, I'm going to just say what's happened. But again, when we go back to, well, what's happened? We don't really know. So actually, his way of doing it was probably better because we could actually go, okay, well, we just need to say the facts that we're not together anymore. We're currently, we both have the house, we move in and we move out, and we take 50% care of the children. And that's kind of all people really need to know. But I think people are looking for gossip. They're looking for the drama. And if they're not getting it from you, whether they intend to or not, they might, try and encourage it.
Fill it in themselves. Yeah. Well, that's what they always say, don't they? A communication void is just an open space waiting for people to make stuff up into. But I also think as well, it's kind of like I think you have to teach people how you want them to treat you as well, don't you? So, when your partner and you split, there's this kind of tendency for people, like you say, to want a narrative, want a story. They want a good guy and they want a bad guy. But actually, what you're trying to teach them is that you don't want them to demonize your partner because, I'm sure you'll go on to talk about, you've got kids and that's their other parent. So that whole demonization and the whole pointing the finger and making somebody the bad guy is just not helpful when you've got 2, 3, however many children, who need to have a secure, loving relationship with both parents. So I always think you have to try and get people to understand that critiquing the other person is critiquing the children in some way.
Yes. And also about information flow. Very early on, I was very adamant that I was focused on what I wanted and what I needed at that point. And I knew that what I didn't want to know. And I didn't want to know, when Ben was going out and if Ben was doing this or going on a date or whatever, because it was a way of protecting myself and, keeping myself in a good headspace. And so I did what a lot of people do and kind of like unfollowed people. And I, I had these discussions with Ben and said, I just can't see, I don't want to see what you're doing. Obviously, if you're happy to keep me, that's fine. But for me, it's just uncomfortable. But that doesn't stop anyone else coming to you going, oh, I saw Ben did this on so-and-so. I saw Ben went here on so-and-so. And again, so you have to, and that is exactly what I had to do. I had to say to people, I'm just not interested in that. I don't want to know. And again, it takes time. And a lot of the time, it's not coming out of anything mean or nasty. People just trying to protect you and trying to make sure that, you've got all the information that you need, but you're trying to teach them what information you actually want. Because what you need and what you want is very different.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's interesting, isn't it, that people assume that more information is what you need when actually in the world we live in sometimes just a bit of quiet and a bit of space is probably better for the healing journey, isn't it? Rather than having it rubbed in your face the whole time and feeling that you should be paying attention to something that actually is no longer any of your business, is it, on one level?
Absolutely.
So talk us through then. So it sounds like you had a fairly amicable split. I'm sure had its moments, but you went through relationship therapy. And how then did you decide how you were going to move on and live your lives as co-parents? Talk us through those kind of discussions.
So we did couples counselling, marriage counselling, whatever you want to kind of describe it as, for a few months beforehand. And then we kind of got to February 24 and just very much decided that actually we need to, let's stop it now, even though we probably could have carried on maybe and pushed it to the end of the earth. But we didn't want to rewrite and override all of the really happy, good memories and have new horrible memories that replace those. And so if we kind of is that ending it
on a high almost. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get out while it's good. And so we made that decision. And then we went into our session, we told our counsellor, this is what we've decided. And we kind of shifted the counselling where she had been amazing. And honestly, it was just a revelation, our counsellor. And we kind of shifted gear into, okay, well, how are we going to now co-parent and overcome all of these milestones? So the first thing was to kind of, okay, well, what does the next month look like? How's that going to happen? What are you going to do? How are you going to live? What are the potential pitfalls for the next month? And we were talking about those, and it was, even things like Mother's Day, Father's Day, occasions, birthdays, they're all huge. And we basically realized we had a year of firsts. My first birthday that we're not together, our children's first birthdays, Christmases, all of those kind of things. So it was all very overwhelming. There was suddenly a lot to kind of get through. But for us, it was, okay, well, what is the living situation? And we did a few different things before we broke up. And we kind of knew what worked and what didn't work. And we decided that, okay, well, we want to try and keep our house for as long as we can and as long as it works. Because for us, both our children are adopted and they both have additional needs. And they are calmest and they feel safest when they're in their home. And so we didn't want to take that away. We wanted to go as slow as we possibly could for them and as slow as we could possibly take it ourselves and, whilst protecting ourselves. And so we decided we'd both have separate places as well. And so that was a very important thing. Ben, it took a bit longer for Ben to get somewhere. And so he really struggled not having his own space and felt quite stressed. And that was quite difficult. I was lucky enough to have somewhere relatively quickly that became my own kind of place. So we do week on, week off, and we do a changeover on a Saturday.
So you're talking about a classic nesting arrangement then, where you
classic nesting, something I'd never heard of until this.
Yeah. So you keep the family home, the children stay in the family home, and then you as parents rotate in and out, and you're doing it on a week on, week off.
Exactly. We're the ones who basically get displaced.
Yeah, you're the ones that move, but you've got one place each now. But you're right, that's an absolutely key point, isn't it? Because so it's you need to have money to be able to do this arrangement, don't you? Because you've both got to afford somewhere else to go, and then you've got the house that you're keeping on as well. And it sounds like it's quite stressful when you'd found somewhere and Ben was still looking. And I can appreciate and I can imagine, I'm sure lots of people, if they're in a situation where they're currently trying to move in and out the house to give each other space or whatever, would probably appreciate the stress that puts you under when you're feeling a bit like a nomad.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about, throughout this whole process, fairness is a massive thing in divorce, right? And it's a really hard thing. And obviously I had my place and Ben hadn't got his yet. And, that wasn't fair. And so we were always trying to find ways, and I was trying to, you know, think of ways, okay, how can I make it more comfortable for Ben? And is there anything that I can do? And it was that kind of like always just trying to be kind was kind of always at the back of my head, even though that's not always easy to do.
No, it's not easy to do, but it's amazing if you can dollop out some kindness when things are tricky like this. The difference that it makes is absolutely tremendous. I mean, in your case, it could have been the difference between that situation working out long term, having the nesting, versus, Ben throwing the towel and saying, this doesn't work for me. We're going to have to come up with a different arrangement. So, Jonathan, why don't you give us an insight into exactly how the arrangements between you and Ben work and what nesting means in practical terms for the two of you?
So for our situation, we've got our kind of house, we've got the family home, and then we both have our separate places to stay. And every Saturday at about midday, we do a changeover. So the person who is then moving in, so if I've had the week off out of the house, I'll then come back at about midday, take over from the kids. Ben and I might have lunch together, or we might take the dog for a walk with the kids, or we'll just have a catch up if we haven't seen each other during the week or had much communication. Then we essentially do a handover. I say goodbye to the kids. I let the kids know if I'm going to see them at all during the week, so they have a heads up, and so they're not wondering or feeling anxious, and so they can kind of have a plan. And then pack all my kind of bits that I need for the week, and then head over to my place, and then vice versa on Ben's week. And we also obviously have to, whilst the house is one thing, but then it's not just the house. You then have to deal with things like money and bills. And so we have an app that we use, and we have a way of tracking our spending. So for during the week, anything that I buy for the house or for the kids, like food and that kind of stuff, we track it on an app. And then kind of once a week, once every other week, that person then gets the money spent back from our kind of pot, our joint accounts that we still have at the moment. And that works really well.
Let me just dig into that a second then, because obviously I think I want to understand this in real practical nitty gritty details. I think this is really important stuff. So let's say you go to Sainsbury's or wherever and you do a weekly shop and you've bought some shaving foam for you along with the rest of the shop. What happens to that?
So we, again, it's all about being kind. Is shaving foam the end of the world? No. Is it really expensive? No. Is it something that Ben might use? Yes. So that would all go in. If I was going to buy a really lovely bottle of aftershave that I keep in my cupboard in the house, no, that's not, Ben might have a problem with that.
Okay. So you've got your own space in the house then. You've got personal space that you don't go into. And so you've got the communal space, but within the house, there's like personal zones effectively.
Well, no, in a way. Yeah. So we, again, and funnily enough, I was listening to your podcast talking about having space and having your own things and what you share, what you don't share. And yes, if we're both in the house for some reason and the other person's having a shower, I won't go into the bedroom because it's all very open. We've got like an ensuite and things. And so if I need to go in, I would knock. But what we do is, so we've both got new partners. And for instance, last weekend, my partner was down, Lewis, and we stay in the guest room. So in my week in the house, I would stay in the guest room with Lewis. And then if no one's here, I will go to what is our master bedroom. And vice versa, when Ben's here, if his new partner was here, Ben would stay in the guest room with his partner. And so we've still got, it's our space. So when we're here on our own, I don't want to lie in a bed that Ben and his partner has laid in, and vice versa. Ben doesn't want to lay in the bed that I've been in with my partner.
So there's some real thought gone into the personal boundaries around this then, by the sound of it.
Yes. Yeah. And even, and it's all come from, don't get me wrong, we haven't sat down this and got this on the first try. There has been plenty of, that's not okay. That made me feel really uncomfortable. What can we do to make us not feel uncomfortable with that? So for instance, we both have our own sinks in our bathroom. And if Lewis is over, he'll use my sink. He won't use Ben's sink because at the same time, Ben doesn't want to come home to a sink that he didn't leave it the way he left it. So, and it's those kind of things. Again, it's that consideration.
Yeah. And I like the idea that it's taken a while to get to this, that you didn't kind of sit down with some great predetermined checklist and go through it, but
Oh
that you've
gosh,
done this by
yeah.
the process of discovery. And that's testament to the relationship that you've got and how well you've ended it ultimately, isn't it? That you've ended it in such a way that you can have these discussions. And to me, this is the whole point of doing things amicably, that you just look at what you've been able to create, because there's some kindness oiling the way and helping you, get a new agreement and a new way of working that's not right first time, but takes a bit of trial and error by the sound of it.
Oh, absolutely. And we're still getting it wrong. We are still getting it wrong. There are still things that we've either forgotten, like that we agreed to, or there's new things that are popping up. But the really nice thing is with our counsellor, who we still see once a month, she's given us the tools to overcome a lot of this without having to take an issue back to her. So we go to her and, she goes, has anything kind of happened? And we're like, well, this has happened, but we've already dealt with it because you gave us the tools on how to overcome these problems. Whereas beforehand, God knows what would have happened.
Well, you'd have, like you say, you'd have taken it back to her, wouldn't you? And she'd have been arbitrating in the counselling session. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or we would have had an argument about it, or I would have gone and sulked, or goodness, everything.
But you talk about those tools then. What sort of tools do you think you have found most useful?
So one of the things, the very, very first things, I think it was even in our first session that we ever had, this before we broke up, her name's Jenny. Jenny said to us, you have to make time for each other. You have to make time to sit and just spend quality time with each other. And 18 months later, that hasn't changed. We're divorced now, but we still make time to spend quality time with each other. And we now spend quality time with each other as really good friends. And that's not always just me and Ben. That might be me, Ben, and the kids. That might be me, Ben, and some of my friends. But we've still got a lot of couple friends. And last week we went out for dinner with them and it was lovely. Really, really nice. We laughed and we joked, and that, I think, is one of the key things, is make sure you've got that time and that opportunity to have those conversations, because it's, life is busy, 2 kids, and it's not always appropriate to have these conversations around them because they do listen and they do pick things up. And sometimes you need to have that space to explain, and then sometimes also have that opportunity to go, okay, do you know what? We need to take a pause. Let's take 10 minutes, which we've done before. I need a break because I'm becoming I'm becoming overly stimulated, and I can get to the point where I then don't become succinct in what I want to say, and I get very frustrated. And whereas Ben's very good at staying on point and focused.
Yeah. So then you feel like someone else is running rings down you, don't you? And it's, tough then.
It's really hard. So yes, it's making that time for dinner with things. And then also another thing is like putting yourself in their shoes and understanding each other's personalities as well. So I've got ADHD, and part of that, of my personality, is rejection sensitivity. I find it very hard when I'm rejected about the smallest of things, or even, for instance, oh, do you want to go get a coffee? No, sorry, I can't today. Oh, okay. What's wrong with me? And in the context of a relationship, or especially post relationships, no, have I done something wrong? Did I what I said yesterday? Did that? And you can go around in your head. And so if you don't then have that opportunity to kind of talk about it, it can run away with you.
It sounds like you've invested a lot of time and effort in upskilling yourselves in communication and talking to each other, and as you say, making the time. Do you think that, I would personally mandate counselling for everyone going through a separation or divorce, because I don't know how you do it without. I think having somebody professional helping you communicate and work through stuff is invaluable. But how have you found the counselling process? I'm particularly interested that you've used the same therapist for when you were sort of working on the relationship to essentially conscious uncoupling, if you will let me use Gwyneth's word.
Yeah. And it is that uncoupling, absolutely. And so we kind of carried on, and I found it incredibly, incredibly helpful. she has always made our sessions feel very joyful, even when they really weren't. And there's obviously tears and all sorts that happen in counselling, and she's always found, it's always ended reasonably nicely. And even when it's getting to the end and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is ending soon, she'll have that extra time. She'll be like, I can't leave you. I can't let you walk out the door when it's kind of like this. And she was very patient. She also, I felt, was great at helping us see each other's point of view. There was a lot of times that I would say something, Ben might disagree, and then she would go, okay, well, Ben, that might not be actually what John means. It's probably this. And then helping him understand. And even more so for me, I could be quite reactive, very instinctively reactive to something. And she would help me go, okay, but that's not actually what Ben said. And that was amazing to me, because I'd be like, yeah, I thought that's what he said. And she'd be like, no, that's not what he said. And I was like, oh, okay. So just having, and it's not about having a referee, and it's not about winning and who's right and who's wrong. It's about decoding what that other person is trying to tell you, because you're there because you can't do that at home. You've tried to talk to each other, and when you do it without someone, you can't hear what they're saying. So actually you do need that person to kind of translate, well, actually this is what he's saying, and this is probably why he's saying it. And then it kind of moved on to the practical advice, and she has a lot of experience, and so giving us recommendations, even helping us with the children. Like I mentioned before, they both have additional needs, and recommending resources to us, and kind of helping us come up with a plan. Okay, so we're separating now, and we're getting a divorce. How do we tell the kids? And so those are the types of conversations that we'd have in counselling. What do we do? How do we do it? When do we do it? And finding out, because we both, luckily we both kind of agreed the process of how we do it, but choosing the right language, all of those kind of things, and having a therapist with you to make those really, really difficult conversations. It felt we were being supported as a unit, as a co-parenting unit.
And it also sounds like it wasn't heavy-handed as well. So it wasn't that she was telling you what to do. She was giving you the skills to be able to take this relationship forward. And I like what you're saying at the beginning about the fact that it just, you got to the end of the road where you could support each other as a married couple. But doing a separation in this way has given the relationship a new lease of life in terms of where you can take each other as co-parents. And I just think that's such a beautiful expression of, how to transition from being parents to co-parents, and from a married couple to a separated couple.
Yeah. And for us, there was a lot of aspect. It wasn't just obviously with the children. We have a couple of businesses that we need to run with each other, and that needs to be fair. And so there's all those kinds of obstacles. We then used which this was the best bit. This is what I love, that we didn't use a solicitor. We had one for the legal bits that you have to do, and creating the financial order and all of that. But all the negotiating was done with our counsellor. I mean, she must have really enjoyed it, because it was so different. And when you're going through the financial stuff, because let's face it, that is one of the biggest parts of a divorce. There's a lot of emotion behind money. And again, when you mentioned earlier that you have friends and family going, oh, you're entitled to this, you're entitled to that. And even though you deep down don't feel like that, you get, oh, am I entitled to that?
Well, once they've said it, you can't unhear it, can you? That's the problem. And then you think you're being weak.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's a bit like, oh, okay, well, if I don't get that, then they're going to think that I've kind of just rolled over and just given up. But luckily, I'm a reasonably firm person, and I knew what was fair, even though, don't get me wrong, again, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy ride. It was a roller coaster. And when there was bits that I specifically wanted and needed, and Ben may not have agreed, it was digging into the emotion, kind of go, okay, Ben, why don't you agree with that? Or John, why do you feel that you are entitled to that? And once we dug into that emotion, it happened both ways. It was a bit kind of, okay, well, I really want that because it's a memory of this, and I feel if I don't have that, then that's an even bigger part of a loss for me. And it just, by keeping that, it makes me feel like my whole life hasn't, fallen apart. Whereas actually, did I need it? No. Do I really want it? No.
You want something else, and maybe you can get that feeling somewhere else in a different decision or a different asset. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And it was the same for Ben. We kind of said that with our divorce, that if Ben felt like he gave up too much and I felt like I didn't get enough, then that's the perfect compromise, because we're both not. Because I don't think you're ever going to get two people who are perfectly happy. Because if one person is really happy, then the other person probably
Is not.
isn't.
Yeah. Now, we always say that sign of a good divorce is when everyone's a little bit disgruntled, but not much, but a little bit, just feeling slightly.
Exactly. And I think it was safe to say we both were. So
Yeah.
great.
Exactly. But the other thing I think you're sort of explaining beautifully is that divorce ultimately is an emotional issue with legal and financial consequences. But the way that,
It's all emotion.
the traditional services are set up is they're set up as legal services. And I think that notion of doing this with somebody who can talk you through the emotional journey is fundamentally important. That's why we set up Amicable, to help people with the emotional journey and then deal with the legal and financial consequences of that. So it really resonates what you're saying in a real way.
And it's true. I went and I saw a solicitor when it was kind of first kicking off, and she terrified me. She absolutely terrified me. I was like, she was so aggressive. And I was just like, this isn't what I want. This isn't where I want to go down. And I think, like, if you go down that route, you can become very unstuck. And what's left at the end of it? Nothing. You get the solicitors a little bit, richer. You're a lot poorer, and actually there's no relationship at the end of it.
Yeah.
So you've actually, everyone's a loser.
Everyone's lost.
Us.
And your kids particularly need you to both be good co-parents. They need you to want to get on and be able to get on. So, yeah. I mean, it must have been very tricky owning a business together, as you mentioned, ultimately, because you've got to work together, you've got to see each other all the time. Has that got easier over time, do you think? Is that one of the things that you feel pleased that you've continued to work together, or?
Yes, that was one of the, that we kind of solved that pretty quickly. In the businesses, we kind of divided up into who was managing what, and kind of shares were moved all over the place. And actually, we don't day to day running of our businesses. We've created businesses that are quite hands off. Like I said, one of them, which is my secure dog field. Whereas you can imagine, I don't really. It's a very remote thing, and it's what I run. And then Ben manages our hotel kind of day to day. And so, but if there is anything, then we get on. We're friends. We're close. It's easy, and I have so much respect for Ben and his business acumen. I used to be in the police. I was a police officer for 7 years, and I came into this business world not knowing a thing. And he's taught me so much, and I'm so grateful. And if I ever, came up with a new business idea, he's exactly who I would turn to for advice. And I would always go to him because, like I said, I've learned so much.
Well, that's an amazing sentiment, a really lovely sentiment. If you were to reflect back on this journey, and there are other people listening who are maybe in a similar situation where they're at the beginning of a breakdown of a relationship, but they've got kids, they want to remain amicable, what would be your top tips for somebody listening today?
I think my top tip for a amicable divorce is to remember that your behavior to each other is the only thing that is going to affect your future together. It doesn't matter what anyone else says or anyone else does. How you treat each other is going to dictate how close you can be in the future and how close you're going to be with your children. And so whenever you want to do that thing that's going to annoy them, but it's just not worth it. So just be kind and keep the conversation flowing.
Be kind and keep the conversation flowing. That's it, isn't it? In a nutshell. Thank you, Jonathan. John, you've spoken about the most amazing support that you've received. Where can people find that kind of support if they're going through something similar?
So if someone was going through something similar, I would fully recommend our counsellor. Her name's Jenny Blaine. She's based in Canterbury, and just a quick search online, you'll be able to find her, and she will guide you through your journey of uncoupling.
And for separation or co-parenting support, you can also visit amicable.co.uk, where you can explore all of our resources or book a free advice consultation for help and support. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can hear about new podcast episodes by subscribing for updates and visiting thedivorcepodcast.com, or download us on your favourite listening platform. Finally, we'd love to know how we can help further. So if you want to share questions on divorce or separation or co-parenting, please get in touch with us at hello@amicable.co.uk. Thanks so much for your time today, John. It's been an absolute joy listening to your positive story. And thank you, everyone, for listening.